Do you recall that gluttonous bull, that blubberous mound known as Gary, that would always feel perky when offered roast turkey and could often eat more than could carry? Well, you'll maybe have guessed he was feeling depressed, having eaten the last of that type, and would while his days with a sorrowful gaze and find solace in cartons of tripe. Hours he spent dreaming of lands that were teeming with the bird that he so much desired, and nights hardly sleeping spent sobbing and weeping, leaving him haggard and tired. Hundreds of eggs, juicy thighs, tender legs, ostrich and eagle he tried, but nothing, it seemed, matched quite what he dreamed, nor helped fill that void left inside. As the months would pass by, in his bed he would lie. Not a sniff of the bird passed his lips. Bad thoughts filled his mind, quite the darkest of kind, even how he might cash in his chips. But then, out of the blue, over the airwaves came through, bellowed loud on the tannoy broadcast. It was Alf, the fat fool, his old nemesis from school, a voice from the long-distant past. An explorer by trade, Alf professed to have made a find in the jungles of Thailand. Buried deep underground, he claimed he had found the lost map to the great Turkey Island. A place lost in time, where genetics don't rhyme, and wild beasts roam volcanic plains. More legend than fact, a land left quite intact from man's trespass and civilized reigns. By a wall near the seas lived the tribe, Buckawees, a primitive peoples of old. Small-legged and short-arsed, they'd get lost in the grass, and with little to wear, bloody cold. Life was basic and rough, and survival quite tough, all led by an elder named Hugh, with his arse-ugly wife known as Ware all her life, and son Wat, who did not have a clue. Shy and absurd, the tribe worshipped a bird that strayed wild behind the huge wall. A great turkey beast, weighing 10 tons at least, that they fed with lost sailors that called. On hearing Alf's news, Gaz was mightily enthused and headed quite sprightly to town. He sought out a chap to acquire Alfie's map, or at least help him track the man down. With a compass in tow and Alf's plans in the know, finding him didn't take long. A map's copy was sourced, quite illegally of course, which meant that the race was now on. His spy had confided that Alf had decided to travel by way of the skies and had sourced an almighty balloon he called Blighty, which before long was ready to rise. Gaz had, however, through observing the weather, decided to chance it by ship and stood onto a tanker as the boat stood at anchor before hiding below for the trip. But his weight in the keel proved far from ideal, and within yards the ship's hull had grounded. And so still stuck in port, crew were somewhat distraught, whilst the captain was left quite confounded. Alf headed east, where the trade winds increased, and took a definitive lead. all helped by his ass that was pumping much gas and assisting him raise his top speed. Meanwhile, Gaz's boat took an age to refloat, then was hampered by high-pitching seas. Great winds of gale force blew his vessel off course, and the motion played hell with his knees. With some 30 days past, each were getting downcast, when Alf spotted an island below. Its shape quite unique, with a form, tail to beak, of a giant great turkey on shore. Alf could not move too soon, and he popped his balloon, crash landing on the isle's rocky shore. But before he could hide, he'd been captured and tied by those tribesmen I've spoke of before. With a chorus of jeers, they poked him with spears and marched him back to their base, where a great fire was lit, and Alf forced to sit as they danced and blew smoke in his face. A number played drums, while the old hags gnarled their gums and took turns to bleat like a goat. Then they basted Alf's arms with some garlic-themed balms and stuffed spices and veg down his throat. A garland of eats made of sprouts and root beets was decoratively hung round Alf's waist. Then a sprinkle of salt and a dusting of malt was added to improve their guests' taste. At last, the drums stopped, and the Fakawis all dropped, bowing and chanting in prayer. A splint of licked grass was then rammed up Alf's arse before hoisting him high in the air. Tossed over the wall, they heard Alfie fall. Oh, their God would be pleased with this feast. With that splint burning bright, he'd be lit up all night and draw in their big turkey beast. As surmised, the bird came, intrigued by the flame and infused by the smell on Alf's skin. Hungry to kill, it ran fast off the hill, impatient to start and tuck in. Yet as was, Alfie's landing had in fact hit hard standing, and his bowels jarred as if something had cracked. Seemed the veg sprouts and sauce were now running their course, and fast moving down Alf's digestive tract. Cramped up and haunched, a great exocet launched deep in the bowels of Alf's gut. A huge ball of gas, like a zeppelin, alas, roared like a jet from his butt. With no warning right then, a full Richter 10 sparked from the splint in Alf's breeks. The bomb that ensued was beyond magnitude of megaton size from Alf's cheeks. The ground started to shake like a major earthquake and stopped the bird dead in its track. Blinding light glazed its eyes, a huge cloud filled the skies, and hot wind scorched its feathers and back. Alf's discharge was vast, and a great trench was cast, destroying all but the odd small exception. But the turkey, by fluke, had in large dodged the nuke, yet was grilled to unquestioned perfection. Alf slowly rose. He'd scorched half his toes and had hell of a sting on his ring. but was feeling quite quirky from the smell of the turkey and was chomping to begin and dig in. All this commotion had crossed over the ocean and woken up Gaz in his berth. Stretching his neck, he climbed out on deck to witness this scene of scorched earth. From an island nearby, plumes of smoke filled the sky, raining ash on the boat by his feet. But what raised Gaz's hair was the smell in the air, that sweet scent of roast turkey meat. From the outer hull's ridge, Gaz stormed the ship's bridge, grabbed the helm and made fast for the coast. With that bird ripe for picking, he knew the food clock was ticking before his nemesis had got to the roast. Hitting rocks near a beach, the boat started to breach, and Gaz was flung to the ground all rough-shod. Then who should appear, all forlorn and austere? The Fakawis mourning their god. Talk of downcast, the whole tribe was aghast and totally at lost what to do. Their lands had been toasted and their god totally roasted, a combustive result of Alf's brew. Gaz hadn't to care for these natives' despair, but he gave them a quick resolution. Get him over the wall, and he promised them all a full turkey-based retribution. Taking Gaz at his word, the Fakawis concurred, and a crane was brought in for the drop. As they all gathered round, Gaz was winched off the ground and then lowered over the top. The great forest below was still all aglow, a wasteland of debris and smoke, charred stumps of wood, where great trees had once stood, now uprooted, dismembered and broke. Out through the hue, Gaz caught sight of Alf's view. He was laying on his back in a hole, but when drawing nearby, there was something awry. Something major had taken its toll. Unable to walk and in large part to talk, Alf was in one hell of a state. The girth round his chest stretched the threads of his vest, and his eyes blankly failed to dilate. Full fit to burst, Gaz realised the worst. The bastard had finished the bird. The whole stinking fowl was now lodged in Alf's bow, nothing left but a giant turkey turd. Alf started to moan, then let out a great groan. Indigestion was fading him fast. He stretched out his arm, clasping Gaz in his palm, before sighing and breathing his last. Pained and distraught, Gaz was lost for clear thought, and lit up a monstrous great pyre. Wedging tree posts to fit, he skewered Alf on a spit and roasted him over the fire. With Alf done to the turn, it's not hard to discern what path Gaza then chose to seek. And so, whereupon Gaz and Alf became one, a meeting of mass, so to speak. For a short while at least, Gaz felt fine from his feast, then something started to change. Such was the bulk from consuming Alf's hulk, Gaz's guts had come over all strange. With an intake so vast, some line had been passed, where his innards resembled a star. So dense was its form, it had morphed from the norm, like a black hole from light years afar. The gravitational draw from his deep inner core drew blood from the rest of his frame. Just digesting this mass and its subsequent gas took all his gut strength to reclaim. Violent gaseous vapes made their rear end escapes, carrying a quite sickly aroma, and drained of his clout, Gaz began to pass out before slipping into a coma. When the deluge had cleared, the Fakawis appeared, scared what conclusion to make. Their landscape bereft, with only Gaz left, and he was laid like a corpse at a wake. Very quickly they proved he could not be removed. Such was the weight of dense matter. And whilst clearly alive, there were fears he'd revive and add Fakawi to his next choice of platter. Filled with visions of doom, they chose to entomb their captor whilst he still slept, and set out to build a great shrine that he filled, a stone crypt in which he'd be kept. Then, with fears largely gone, the Fakawis moved on, and nature reclaimed back its lands. With Gaz still disposed, his tomb came quite enclosed behind tree roots, plants and vine strands. Where the landscape had burned, a great forest returned, and in years there was little to see of the wanton destruction from Alf's violent eruption, or the site where the shrine used to be. But just once in a while, on that wild ocean isle, the ground would tremor and sway. Bad smells would abound, with the odd, eerie sound. But that's a tale for a whole different day.